watching activists, it strikes me that as a collective, they instinctively self-organise. Theoretically, if you're an activist for one cause that's good, then I guess you're probably an activist for all causes that are good, in your head. But there's a practical reality problem with that. There's only one of you, so you can't get around to them all, surely. I know somebody who's an activist for want of a better way of describing it, for Indigenous Tigray rights. The rights of Indigenous Tigray people. Now, that person, spiritually, if you like, is also, in her head, this is, an activist for Australian Indigenous rights. Good on her, I am too, in my head, which doesn't do much good, but, it's a start. But anyway, this friend of mine is, well, you probably know who she is if you know who I am. It doesn't matter if you do or don't. But she takes an active activist role with Indigenous Tigray people. Now, I don't think she's got time to take an active role with Indigenous Australian people. And I suspect that she would be all guns blazing for them if she had the time. But the Tigray one is very time-consuming. They're in the middle of a war right now, for a start. So that she's only one girl. Now, should she be marching in the streets for Indigenous Australians as well? Well, we should all be marching for everything at all times, if we could. But we can't, It's just a practical problem. And in this way, I think, and I've sort of suggested to her, just look after the Tigray people, and there are other people who will look after the Indigenous people. We know you're on their side too, but you don't have to demonstrate action with respect to every cause in the world. It's only people like Meryl Streep that do that. I looked her up once. She's a champion for about 13 causes or something. LGBT and all sorts of things. None of them, when I checked, by the way, were involved activism in the direction of reducing the gap between the wealthy and the poor in the United States, because, that would probably hit her bank balance. But she's into looking after poor people in Africa, but not people on Struggle Street in America. Look, that's a whole other thing, isn't it? But she's looking at, look, neither should she have to look after people on Struggle Street in America. She's decided to look after poor African people instead of people that might hit her bank balance. Now, look, forget about Meryl Streep. Back to my goddaughter, as she is. And I sort of suggested to her, well, let somebody else look after that cause, and you look after this cause, but don't listen to anyone if that person says, oh wow, why don't you look after something closer to home, and I say, tell them go get stuffed. Tigray is your home, even if it is a long way away, that sort of thing. It really doesn't matter, what I mean? Look, there's holes in anything you can say. But I think that's the case. I think activists do this automatically. Her brother hangs off, large bridges, like the Sydney Harbour Bridge, for the environment, which is great. But he's probably into Indigenous Australian rights too. Look, he might march for them too, but I'm sure he's, psychologically and spiritually all for Tigray Indigenous rights too. Who wouldn't be if you're a good person? But even he, and he's a super activist, he really is, even he can't get around to every cause. So I think activists kind of organise instinctively, like an organisation, and everybody, delegates him or her or itself to one cause or another, but not to every cause. They almost instinctively say, "I'll look after the environment, you look after the Tigrayans, you look after, the Inuits, you look after LGBTQI and all that sort of stuff, and you look after Indigenous Australian. But listen, we all support each other, but we don't all have to march in all of our protests and so on. You march in that protest, I'll march in that protest." Now, I don't think it's explicit. I don't think there's a worldwide register of activists saying who will pick up what. I think activists quite instinctively, they know that someone's taking care of that, and if you're an activist, I am taking care of this, but I'm not a bad person if I don't take care of all the other bits too. That's all. I just think, you don't need a business plan in the organisation that is World Activism for different departments to be delegated to different people. I think people just pick up those different departments quite naturally. I don't even know if that was worth an episode. But an episode it has been.